All right, so there was a story yesterday. If you've been following any of this at all, you know that Mark Carney, our prime minister, has been working his way through Europe, right? Ukraine, Germany, Poland, Latvia, Estonia. And in addition to everything else that's been going on, talking trade and, of course, support for Ukraine, the story that came up yesterday was Canada apparently ready to procure up to 12 submarines and trying now to figure out where to get them from. So I wanted to understand a couple of things here. Number one, why do we need these submarines now? And secondly, would Canada, we have shipbuilding here, I understand that, but would Canada be involved in any of the work that would be necessary to acquire those submarines? Mark Norman is a retired Vice-Admiral with the Royal Canadian Navy. He's on the line. Mr. Norman, thank you for your time this afternoon. Let me begin by asking that question. I understand the Prime Minister said we're narrowing our choice or who to do business with down to two countries. That's Germany and South Korea. What about Canadian involvement here in manufacturing? Is that part of this deal from what you understand if it were to happen?
Well, it should be part of it, Aaron, and I think that's one of the things that was being deciphered from the statements yesterday. The two manufacturers, the Germans and the Koreans, obviously have significant domestic capacity to do this, but part of what the Carney government is trying to do is they're trying to look for opportunities for Canadian industry, and there is lots that Canada could do to help in this, from manufacturing to supplying components to a whole bunch of different things that Canada could be part of. And there's a variety of ways this can be done. I'm optimistic that we're going to get some direction from the government in the next few weeks, hopefully, that tells those two potential bidders that this is what Canada would like to see as part of this program going forward. Buying everything but it's not necessarily in the long-term interests of Canada. We just become a consumer of somebody else's stuff, and that's not what we want to be.
I had read in the story about this, I thought this is a rather interesting take. It says, Canada's looking to buy up to 12 submarines, quote, with some sort of urgency, unquote. What's the urgency here? Why?
Well, the 4 submarines that we currently have were purchased used in the early 90s from the United Kingdom. And sadly, they're good submarines. They've really been unreliable. And that has a lot to do with your first question, which is that we never had the spare parts. We never really had our own domestic capacity to look after these very complicated systems. And as a result, they're rapidly approaching the end of their life. And so we need new submarines in order to maintain our capability in the early 2030s, 2035 at the absolute latest, or we're basically gonna have a big gap in our capability, and that's not a good thing in the current security environment we find ourselves.
I wonder too, given Mark Carney's new commitment to the Canadian military, this sense of urgency has something obviously to do with that as well. I mean, are these being used, these submarines, if and when we get them? What are we doing with them exactly? Are they just to patrol waters, or do they have to be equipped differently? Do you know?
Well, they will be equipped differently, to use your term. They'll be obviously more modern. They'll have newer sensors and weapons on them. They'll probably be capable of operating some remote underwater systems, robotic systems, and things like that. But fundamentally, they're going to serve 3 major roles. They're going to act as a deterrent for our nasty neighbor to the north and others. They're going to provide us with an extended capacity. In essence, if your listeners think of the police on patrol, you can't patrol everything from the headquarters. You've got to be out on the streets and watching what's going on. And the submarines give you an additional capacity to do that in the extensive waters that surround Canada on 3 sides, and especially in the north, as you mentioned. And they'll also be capable of deploying alongside our allies in support of whatever international security operations that we have to support in the years to come.
Just as a final question, are you confident that this gets done sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I'm actually surprisingly optimistic, and I say that with a bit of a joke, because this is the first time we've seen a government take this kind of unprecedented action, short of when we were in Afghanistan. But to down select that rapidly, to have the Prime Minister himself actively engaged in the process and making those announcements, these are significant indications of a government that, to me, is taking this stuff really seriously. And we have two potentially excellent partners. The submarines themselves are fantastic, but more important than the submarines is the industrial capacity and everything else associated with keeping them running for what could be 30 to 40 years into the future.
We will leave it at that. I thank you so much for your time. Appreciate the insight as well. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, and have a great afternoon.
You too.